New Zealand, a country with a mass of 101,000 square miles and a population of 5.5 million people. It is a country famous for the Maori culture, rugby, and of course, Shire. I mean the entirety of the world of Lord of the Rings Peter Jackson had introduced the world to. Speaking of Peter Jackson, he was also instrumental with carving his name in horror movie makings that put New Zealand horror film scene on the cinematic map. It started with 1987 Bad Taste, about a tumultuous fight between human survivors and man-eating alien invaders on Earth. 2 years later in 1989, he gave us a puppetry horror opera with Meet the Feebles that might not be the same playing field as the Jim Henson's were shot. Brain Dead, or also known as Dead Alive from 1992, had gone into that uncomfortable mother and son relationship turned wrong, a la Psycho, and was banned in several countries during its release for being too gruesome. Finally, in one of Michael J. Fox's final theatrical performance, Jackson gave us The Frighteners in 1996, when a grifter used spirits for his own gain, which ended up having to deal with a sinister threat to both the living and the dead. Over the years, together with the ascension of Peter Jackson, there were a group of directors making notable horror movies. Let us give some credence to these wonderful works. Jack Be Nimble from 1993 by director Garth Maxwell is like a twisted version of Romeo and Juliet, filled with bad people of various magnitude, and starring Alexis Arquette when he was still qualified himself as the male gender. Aberration from 1997 by director Tim Boxall gave us a creature feature with flesh-eating lizards which make you look at your house geckos with contempt after watching it. Black Sheep from 2006 by Jonathan King brought a threat from a life form that spawned more in New Zealand than human beings, that is the wool-producing sheep. In 2007, we have Perfect Creature from director Glenn Standring, which was a stylish vampire feature which delved into a brotherhood of vampires who were infatuated in calling each other brother. From director Paul Campion, we have The Devil's Rock in the year 2011, a movie about two covert operatives uncovering Nazis' plan to unleash a demon during World War II. This was a movie that succinctly combined war thriller with supernatural horror. First of two notable Kiwi horror from 2014, Housebound by Gerard Johnstone, which is a horror comedy about women on house arrest realizing the house had been haunted by spirits with worse misdemeanor than herself. The movie propelled Johnstone to Hollywood to direct Megan, and the sequel that's coming out in 2025. Last but certainly not least, Taika Waititi, another director that gained Hollywood's credence, gave us What We Do in the Shadow, the mockumentary about a group of co-inhabiting vampires and their everyday shenanigans, which spawned two TV series in Wellington Paranormal and the namesake sitcom on Hulu, which recently ended their 6 seasons run. In 2025, Shudder brought prominence to not one but 2 horror offerings from the great land of New Zealand, which earned quite a bit of traction on their streaming platform. Grafted by director Sasha was another monumental body horror from a female director, hot on the heels of Coralie Fargate and The Substance. From the onset, we were introduced to young Wei and her father, both with facial disfiguration like keloid scars, which I am suffering as well. Wei's father is a brilliant scientist who is trying his best to find a remedy of making skin graft from animal skin which would not be rejected by the human body and form a permanently beautifying remedy. Of course, scientific research was never always going to adhere to your theoretical calculations, and Wei's father was overzealous with his discovery and met a gruesome demise. With determination, Wei acquired scholarship in New Zealand, where her paternal auntie was residing, now divorced, with a daughter near Wei's age, and living in a house barely finished renovation. Yet auntie, being a travelling beauty product salesperson, would not have the time and effort to follow up with her domestic issues. Wei would be looking forward to the facility within her faculty to allow her to continue her father's lifelong work, which of course would be beneficial to her. In this university environment, Wei has been scorned by her own cousin Angela and her friends, giving us the classic mean girls tropes. As audience, you knew that things would not end up well for these girls. One of the girls, who is the alpha blonde, would be having a tryst with their professor, himself mired with his tenure ending as he could not come up with the desired results to sustain it. Wei would find an elusive element to successfully create the MacGuffin remedy for skin grafting, which of course would go into the wrong hands and drove our protagonist into a chain of abhorrent and unforeseen events. In a movie that really spreads the notion of beauty is only skin deep, Wei's metamorphosis into someone she probably hated was a plot for audience to embark upon. One of the girls was genuinely treating Wei as a friend, while her cousin Angela was a total bitch to her, and the allegory was even more pronounced with her chihuahua kept yapping throughout the movie. I knew that Wei was trying hard to fit in, but bringing your newfound friends, although one is your blood relative, to eat braised chicken feet tell you that she's as overzealous when dealing with things as her old man. Plagiarizing and stooping low in the moral compass to succeed in your field was something very evident in science, so the unethical deeds, besides sleeping with your students, the professor had committed was not surprising to me. I thought Wei was smart to not believe him totally, yet she needed her help to succeed in her own quest for the remedy, so whatever fate befell on her with the mentor was something she was expecting. The parallel with the substance was very apparent, and the body horror elements dexterously been used to exemplify the plot in both movies. The continual wrongdoings of our protagonist and striving till the very end when you knew your demise was imminent was evident in both movies as well. There was a body transformation in both movies that were equally cringeworthy and hilarious to me to sit through. This was a generally unknown cast of local New Zealand actors, and I thought Joanna Soon in the lead role of Wei was fine, but light year apart from Demi Moore's performance or even Margaret Qualley's performance. This was director Sasha Rainbow's full-length feature film directorial debut. You can see that it is rough around the edges, but she was able to elicit some notable visuals for the audience, and the viscera on display can be a bit hard to watch, although the final result on the screen was not as horrendous as what I had imagined from carrying out the act itself. I do want to highlight one of the writers, Au Hui-ling, a Malaysian-born Chinese who had to go to other parts of the world to carve out her name in the entertainment scene, very much like Amanda Nell Yu, who directed Tiger Stripes, which I had did a review recently. Grafted was a movie with a plot we were not unfamiliar with, using classic tropes and angles to facilitate storytelling. With the limited resources they had, Director Rainbow and her crew was able to create a memorable body horror feature. This is a 7 out of 10 rating in my book. Up next, we have The Rule of Jenny Pan from director James Ashcroft. Based on a short story by New Zealand writer Owen Marshall, this was a story set within an old folks' home, but this was no cocoon. Our protagonist Stefan was a judge who suffered a stroke while he was in court, which set him into a partial immobile state. A man of his stature, he felt he should not be defeated by the impediment, and staying in the care home was just part of his rehabilitation process. However, the first thing he witnessed in the home was the death of a resident when his clothing was caught on fire from a cigarette. Stefan soon realized the old folks community in his care home was ruled by an iron arm of one Dave Creeley, but more specifically a hand puppet he called Jenny Pan, seemingly after a famous puppet character like Judy and Punch in this fictitious world. Dave would do whatever he wants during the daytime in the communal playroom and at night in the rooms of these old people. It was apparent that Creeley knew the ins and outs of the operation of the care home and the way to handle different staff members to allow him to saunter around creating havoc at its whims. To sustain his reign and to ensure residents abide to his rules, he went around baiting for acknowledgement in the form of licking of his wrist, where he put on the puppet Jenny Pan, in the same fashion of kissing the ring of the Pope or something. Coming from a world of justice and righteousness, Stefan of course could not stand for this act of megalomania and the tyranny, which of course led him to suffer the brunt of a cascade of psychological and physical bullying from Dave, while asking senile old people to lick your wrists as a form of reigning over them, or pouring urine over a stroke patient, or knocking the hard plastic head of his puppet on dementia patients can be considered deplorable, Dave Creeley's misdemeanor went unchecked and escalated to some folks losing their lives even though the intention was never to cause death. Stefan would find out the truth behind Creeley and realize that his nemesis was secretly green with envy of his own achievements and stature as a judge. It just felt like one of them had to go. The Rule of Jenny Pan is a classic prison horror movie, very much like Chow Yun-fat and Tony Leung Ka-fai in Prison on Fire. A newbirth into a controlled environment with only a solitary companion against the adversity at every corner, and stifling a tyranny that engulfed the whole place which entrapped these people. The caliber of acting on display was insurmountable, with Academy Award-winning actor Jeffrey Rush as Stefan and Oscar-nominated John Lithgow as Dave Creeley. Both actors could meander through righteousness and antagonism easily, and it felt effortless for them to do on screen, at times with just facial expressions, especially when the character of Stefan is wheelchair-bound and could not even bathe without assistance. It may sound condescending the way Stefan talked to his fellow care home residents, but it always ends up as something meaningful and not from ill intention. As much as the audience was rooting for the demise of Creeley, there were many instances when you could not help but to sympathize with him unless he tried to sexually assault a blind old lady out of spite. Special mention to local Kiwi seasoned actor Josh Henare, who played Tony, a former New Zealand rugby hero who certainly fell from grace with his old age and had been dying to fight back against the bullying from Dave. The sad haka sequence he did in front of Dave was heartfelt, and it was a display to show that he was fighting back even though he knew he might not win. Generally, The Rule of Jenny Pan was more of a psychological horror, although director Ashcroft uncovered the fear and inhibition of the old people in the care home through certain scary visuals, especially a giant head of Jenny Pan, or when the puppet gave a scary expression for no apparent reason. The puppet, of course, reminded me of Big Baby from Toy Story 3, which was a fuel for nightmare. There was a constant red illumination from Dave Creeley's room with no explanation given, perhaps just to symbolize his deep-rooted evil persona. However, I could not fail but to associate it with the episode titled The Chicken Roaster on Seinfeld, when Kramer's apartment unit was being doused in that constant red neon light that broke him down. The Rule of Jenny Pan is a nifty feature that showed the ecosystem within an old folks care home, which generally was not a sprawling environment we would watch, and through majestic performances from Rush and Lithgow, we saw a memorable duo unravel on screen. There was this niggling issue when I felt that there were at least twice that it felt like ending before the real ending. Perhaps it was just myself. I'm awarding The Rule of Jenny Pan a 7.5 out of 10, so do catch it if you have the opportunity. As we come to an end, I hope I can give you a glimpse into the world of New Zealand horror, which covered a whole kaleidoscope of horror subgenres. So don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. The preceding review was Control Freak from director Shah No, which was also an uncharted territory. If I make my journey to throw the ring into Mount Doom, I hope I will not have my face cut off and have urine poured on me by a grizzled old man with a hand puppet.